Mary Aileen Buss. I'm one of the librarians at the Long Beach Public Library, and what we're doing today is some Star Wars felt figures, hair clips, and ornaments. Let me put my webcam down so that you can see my work surface here. Okay. And the first thing we're making today is a little porg. That's, if you don't remember, that's the little puffin-like bird from The Last Jedi. The island where they filmed part of that had puffins all over it, and they weren't allowed to remove them, so they turned them into space puffins. We're using felt. Now, the hard part about cutting specific shapes in felt is that there are no good solutions to the problem. We need this little porg shape. We need two of them, front and back. This is template plastic. It's thin, flexible plastic. They sell it for making quilt patterns, but it's good for all kinds of patterns. If you don't have this and want to make your own felt figures, you can use any kind of thin cardboard. Poster board, oak tag works really well. So with the little pieces that I'll be working with in a minute, you can just sort of hold them up and cut around them. If I did tissue paper patterns, I could pin them to the felt, but then that sort of distorts it. What I'm going to do is draw around it, and then I have to be careful to cut off all of the ink because we don't want any of this pink that I'm using to show. So I'm going to make two little porg shapes. Hold this steady so it doesn't shift and draw all the way around it. And then I'm going to cut these out. And these are the bases. And you see I cut carefully inside the ink markings so that I don't have the wrong color on it. It means they come out a little bit smaller than the pattern that I have. But I have to be careful not to get it too small, or then it won't work right. Okay, there's one. Now I do the other one. It's easier if you're not trying to work with such a big piece of felt. That's why I went ahead and cut that off already. And now I need to cut out some wings. The wings are gray, and I've got the little bit here. And for that, I can just sort of hold it on. Let me do it like this. Just sort of hold it down, and where are my scissors? And cut carefully around it. When I come back here, I'm just going to sort of snip, so I'm not using the whole big piece. If you can't see what I'm doing, just say so, and I'll try to hold it at a different angle. So he needs two little wings. There's one. Let me do another one. There's the other one. And he also needs a little cap of feathers for the top of his head out of the gray. This tiny little piece I've got here. So let me hold that down carefully. Can you see this? I'm not off the edge of the screen. There we go. Whoops, I lost the piece. Well, I remember pretty much how it goes. It's just a little cap of feathers. I have to find that later so I can make another porg. And that's the end of the gray. And then I need to give him the sides of his face are sort of tan color. So I need to cut a couple of little pieces of tan. If you've got any questions about what I'm doing, feel free to ask. Just, unmute yourself and ask a question. If you want to know something, or if I'm going too fast, or if you can't see right. Just come around carefully. Trim all the extra bits away. Okay. And the way I'm getting these down is I'm going to glue them on with hot glue using a glue gun. Unfortunately, you really can't use Elmer's glue on this because it soaks into the felt too much. And if you use enough to get it to stick down, then it makes the felt all stiff and it's not very attractive. So I'm just going to carefully glue this down. Let me make sure I'm doing this one the right way around. Yep, that looks like right. You have to be very careful when you're working with hot glue. You will burn yourself if you touch it by mistake. So be very careful and get it put down straight because you've got a little bit of time to shift it before it sticks so much that you can't. Okay, there's the wings and the little sides of the face. So I put some glue on that. And I always get too much glue. It's hard to get just a little bit. Put that carefully down. And instead of trying to put glue on this cap and then put it down, I'm just going to put a little blob right there where it goes. And you wind up with strings of glue everywhere. So this one, put it down. I'm going to use the end of a little chopstick. Now what I forgot to cut out already is a couple of little eyes. Tiny little black eyes. Let me find the black felt that I have here. Here we go. And these I'm not even going to try to use a template. I'm just going to cut off a little bit and I'll shape them better so that they're round instead of triangular. More or less round. Need to cut the corners off of this triangle or it won't look right. And I need to not cut my fingers in the process. Okay, I think that'll do. It's a little too triangular, but there's space puffins. But didn't get that face over right. Well, too late now. So I'm going to put a little blob of dew, the smallest one I can do, and another one. And I'm going to try to get the eyes on there without burning myself. Put that down. Doesn't want to go. Now it's stuck. Okay, we can get that. And a little spot of the eye. And we're just going to draw on a mouth. If this were a bigger porg, I might try to use a piece of yarn. But for this one, I'm just going to draw it on with the Sharpie, little downturned mouth. And now we're going to let that dry. If you wind up with strings of hot glue the way I am, you can, oh, I see we've got somebody asking a question in chat. Let's see. Not getting it. Can one of my co-hosts look at that chat and see what that's about?
That
Let
was
me
just
know.
me saying that anyone can also type the question into chat if they couldn't say it, you know.
Okay, okay, that's fine. People are free to unmute themselves. So while that's cooling, you see, I didn't get the side of his face on quite right, but nothing we can do about it now. While that's cooling, I'm going to make this into, whoops, I lost it. Oh, here we go. I'm going to make this into a hair clip, which means for the back that I need to figure out where the clip is going in. So I'm going to put it down, and I'm going to make a couple of little marks at the edge of the clip on each side, so I know how wide it needs to be. And then I'm just going to carefully cut some parallel slits. Fold this in half, cut a few slits, and then I can open up the hair clip. And let's see, put it through the slots. Almost got them too far apart, didn't I? But they work. And then I'm going to snap that back together again and turn it over. And on this side, I'm going to put a lot of glue all around. It doesn't matter if it gets on the clip. And then I'm going to very carefully put the top right flat over, push it down a little. And there we have our little pork hair clip. It's like the cat hair clip I have in right now. I'll show you later when I've got the camera back up. Okay. And we'll put that carefully over to the side. I'll show you later how it works as a clip. Actually, I have another one right here. Works as a hair clip. Same thing. Okay, so that's how you do a hair clip. And the next thing we're going to do is a baby Yoda. I think some of you know what a baby Yoda is, and for the rest of you, the show on Disney Plus right now called The Mandalorian has a child that looks like a little bitty Yoda. So I'm going to, this one I did a lot of the cutting out already. Again, we have a front and a back. This one's going to be an ornament. I'm using yarn on it. And that's what I'm going to do first so I don't forget. You need a longer piece of yarn than you think you will. And you tie a knot in each end. And then I'm going to clip off the excess. That just holds the end so that they don't fray over time. And throw the little bits out. And then I'm going to bring that around. And one of the pieces at the top, I'm just going to sew it right in here. You could glue it, but the glue might not hold. This is going to be on the inside, so it won't show. And I'm just going to use a little bit of thread to sew it down. Go around a couple of times. And then I come back up and I tie a little knot in my end and I'll pull it tight. And I've got little scissors to cut the thread off with, but I'm just using the big ones here. Okay. So that's the inside. Now I've got a coat to go on. So let me put some glue on the back of that. And put it carefully down. And I've got a collar to go on the coat. Put some glue across and put the collar carefully down. And then this one's double-sided because it's going to hang where you hang it, and you might be able to see the back as well as the front. So he gets a coat on the back as well. So I turned this over so that the yarn will just be on the inside when we put the two halves together. And I put that down carefully, and I'll set that aside. And now he needs eyes, and he needs the insides of his ears. So for the eyes, and he needs a little tuft hair on the top of his head. So for the eyes, we're just going to make two little round pieces. I'm using the pattern because I want them to be the same size so he doesn't look cockeyed. So two little round pieces. There's one. And here's another one. We've got somebody else waiting to come in. Okay. Thought I'd let her in. Can somebody let Joanne Fassman in? I don't seem to be able to do anything right now.
No, yeah, I did.
He's
It's
joining.
in the process of
Okay.
joining.
Okay. And so that's the end of the green there. And we're going to make ear linings out of this green. It's not really quite the best color, but it's the green I had, so can't exactly go out to the stores and buy more right now, can you? So I'm going to make a couple of little ear linings. It's too wide. Welcome our new person. I'm making a Star Wars felt figures, and this is going to be a Baby Yoda ornament. So when I get a, whoops, I came too far back for this one, didn't I? When I get a moment, I'll pause and go back over a few things. Right now, I'm just cutting out with the little pieces. You can just hold on to them and cut carefully. With bigger pieces, you have to sort of draw around them and then cut so that none of your ink shows that you used to draw around them. And we've got one more little bit that he needs, if I can fish this out properly. And this comes out of the same green as we just used, which I just had here. So this is a little tuft of hair for the top of his head. And I'm going to try to cut around that, but I'll probably have to finish it off after I take the pattern away. Sometimes it's hard to do the tiny little details that you might want to get them right. But if you go slow and careful, you can usually do it. Okay, so I think that works. And now we'll pull the glue gun back over. And I'm going to put a little spot of glue there at the top of his head and put this carefully down so I don't burn myself. And a couple of little spots of glue for his eyes. If you wind up with extra strings of glue everywhere, like I always seem to, once it dries, you can cut them away. And then we just need his ear linings and he'll be ready to put together. So, line of glue up his ear. And again, I didn't get that one on straight. I may want to cut that one away a little later. the edge of that, because it makes it look like the lining is wider than his ear. And that's not good.
Oh, Mary Eileen, Robin wants to know if you can post the patterns, but I think you handmade everything, right? So you just traced and cut it out, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, if you put your email, anybody who wants patterns, if you put your email address into chat or send it to us later at the library, I will email you patterns for everything I have, which is these, and the cats I'll show you a little later at the end. But yeah, I'm not going to post them online, but I'll be happy to email them to you. Okay, so we're ready to put these together. I just need to glue them. Didn't realize you were here, Rob. Let's see. I need to put another stick of glue in this. Just one moment. Okay, there we go. That'll work. And I want to make sure I get it in the ears so that the ears stick together. And I'll put it over all the rest of this, just sort of jiggle it back and forth. As I was saying before everybody came in, unfortunately, you can't use Elmer's glue on this because it just soaks into the felt. And if you use enough to get it to stick together, then it makes a big sloppy mess. And it's all rough and doesn't look right. So, okay. So there we have a baby Yoda ornament. And we're going to give that a little time to cool off before I try to handle it too much. So I'm going to put that to one side. I don't think everybody saw the porg that I did first. This is a hair clip. He's pretty well dry and can take some handling. I mean, cool. Okay, if you don't want to glue, you can also sew them, particularly the ornaments, and then you can stuff them a little bit and make it padded. So, whoops, that's not the one I wanted to do next. This is the one I wanted to do next. So, the next thing I'm going to do is a little Darth Vader ornament. Now, I sewed his face on. You can use a silver, I used a silver Sharpie on this first one, and you can see it's sort of blurred. So this one I tried to stitch. And unfortunately, I never really got very good at embroidery, so it's a little bit messy. But that's what I'm trying to make. So he doesn't need much. He just needs a couple of little bits of red on his front. So I'm going to cut myself a bit of this. It's a little bit too wide. And he's also going to need a hanging thing. Okay, so he gets, I'm gonna put two little blobs here, or maybe just one little blob and put both things on it. Because as I say, I am not an expert with this glue gun or any glue gun. Okay, so one little bit of red and another one above that. And do not touch the hot glue. So let me use the chopstick to position this one. There we go. And while that's cooling a little bit, I'm going to sew the tie, tack it down to the top of this. And again, use a, whoops, didn't tie. Use a longer piece of yarn than you think you're going to need, because you'll wind up cutting the ends off after you knot it. Knot both ends so they don't fray. Cut off the excess on the end. And then just tack that down on what's going to be the inside. Doesn't really matter on this piece of felt. It's exactly the same on the inside and the outside. Oh, I could have sewed the red down. That's what I meant to do when I was planning this. I could just have used a little bit of red thread and stitched them down. And I forgot. So they're glued on. But you absolutely can sew that kind of detail on. You just probably want to match the thread color so that it doesn't show that you've stitched. So I'm going to put these two together, and I'm going to throw a couple of pins in there to hold them in place. These are not exactly the same size, are they? Just going to pin it in a couple of places. It's pretty small, and felt is got a lot of friction, so it doesn't rub out of place the way cotton would if you were trying to do this with cotton. And I'm going to start with the needle inside between the sandwich so the end doesn't show. And you could absolutely do this on a machine. I just don't have a way to get the computer by the sewing machine. So I'm just going to stitch around carefully. This will take a few minutes. It's a lot slower than the glue. Now, if you're making something where you've glued on pieces like this, and then you want to sew it, you have to be very sure that the glue is not too close to the edge, because this thread, the needle and thread, will not go through the glue once it's dry. You just can't do it. I made a big mess of one thing I was trying to do to show y'all, because I was trying to stitch through glue and it just would not work. If I were doing a sewing machine, I would be getting this much smaller and neater stitches, and it would probably work a lot better. But it's good enough for demonstration purposes. And when I come around, I'll be careful to go through the... Did my thread catch on something? No. Be careful to go through the hanger bit so that it holds it in place better. Now I'm basically doing a running stitch, of course, for those of you who know what that is. You usually don't want to go around and around over the edge. It wouldn't matter quite as much on these felt ornaments as it would on some things, but it's a good habit to get into, to sew them like this. Now I'm almost out of the thread, which is nice because I wanted to stop when I got to the bottom anyway. I need to leave the bottom open for a moment. Do one last stitch here. Tie it off a little. Stick the end in through so it doesn't show. Okay, let me just thread the needle again before I forget and try to sew the next thing without any thread in it. I've done that more times than I like to think about. Absent-mindedness, that's me. Remember, feel free to ask any questions you might have, or if you can't see something properly. Now, before I close this off, I'm going to put a little bit of stuffing in. I have fiber fill because I make stuffed animals too. In fact, that's sort of what I'm going to be doing next week. You can just you can take apart a cotton ball to use for this. You could use little odds and ends of yarn. You can use scraps of felt. Anything to give it a little bit of padding. You don't want to put much in, just a little bit. And you want to do a very little bit at a time, which is why I'm pulling this all apart. It's not that big. I can probably just stuff it in there with my fingers. But I'll use the chopstick. Chopsticks are really nice for putting stuffing in small places. And I think I can just do the rest of this in his body and be done. Yep, that's right about right. You don't want these really round. You just want them to have a little bit of padding to them. And then I'm going to sew up the bottom end so the padding doesn't try to fall back out. Let's see if I can make sure that knot goes inside. It doesn't want to cooperate. There we go. And while I was doing that, the thread came out of the needle, of course. I hope my mistakes reassure you that you don't have to be an expert to do this, which is a good thing because I'm certainly no expert. So we're almost done, just another minute or two to get this closed. Okay, and one last stitch and knot it off. And pull it to. See if I can get the end of that hidden in the edge. Okay, and there's your Darth Vader ornament, but he's not finished yet because he needs a lightsaber. Now for the lightsaber, I'm going to use some pipe cleaner. Oh, did I remember to bring? I don't have my wire cutters over here. I thought I brought them. Let me get a pair of scissors. That's not my good sewing scissors. You don't want to use your fabric scissors for anything but fabric because you'll kill the edge on them. So, got a lightsaber here, a little bit of one. Need a hilt on it. And for that, I'm going to take a little piece of the gray felt that I had. It's about the right size. Little rectangle. And I'm going to put a dot of glue on one end. And put one end of the type cleaner down and hold it for a minute. Oh, I hope this felt is long enough. I don't think it is. Wrap that around. It should overlap, and it's not really quite long enough, but I think it works. And the glue on that end was even soft enough to still hold it. And once we put that side down, on Darth here, we'll put a little spot of glue about where his hand would be if he had hands. And carefully put the join down so you don't see it. And there he is, Darth Vader ornament complete with lightsaber. So how are we doing on the time? Oh, we got another 20 minutes. Good, I can show you a Leia also. Let me just tidy a few things away before I make too much of a mess. Now Leia here, again, I already cut her out, most of her. Let's see. And we've got her hair. So before I go anywhere, I'm going to sew a little bit of yarn on to make onto her head to make her hanger, because it's just going to be easier to do that at the beginning. I'm going to sew it on what'll be the back of her head. Where's my white thread? There it is, got unthreaded from the needle. This one I'm just going to glue again. And I just sew it down, making sure I'm catching the yarn properly. Okay, so the head needs to go on the top of the dress. So I'm going to put a little bit of glue here. And put her face down. Hope I don't glue it to the desk. And I'm going to take the other part of the dress and I'm going to glue her hair in the back down there. And then I'm just going to put the front part of the hair across. Put that down carefully. And then turn this over and put glue all around it, including on the braids, her buns on the side of her head here. And very carefully put that down so that it's on top of itself. And she doesn't have much of a face here, so I'm going to give her a couple of little eyes. And she's not quite finished. Darth Vader got a lightsaber, and Leia gets a blaster. I'm just going to sort of draw it. I do have cut it. I do have a pattern here, but it's almost easier just to cut it out carefully. That's maybe a little bit too long. Okay, I'll put a spot over here. And I'll put it carefully down. Use my chopstick to pat it down so I don't get glue on myself. And there we go. So I've made 4 things now. There's the 4 of them. And got a few other things to show you. You can do all, I didn't try to do this now because I didn't think we'd have time, I made an R2-D2 earlier. I kind of messed it up. This is small enough that you can't do as much detail as I would like. That's how I messed it up. I was trying to be too detailed on this. This one would probably also look better if it was stitched, and then I did little extra stitches into the padding to make his legs separate. But you can do things that aren't Star Wars at all. I've got this little chicken that I made for a friend of mine. I've got a tuxedo cat, and the hair clip I'm wearing into my hair today is a calico cat. So you can do all kinds of things.